What's up, guys?
Yo,
What's up?
going
Everything
my
good?
dude?
Shalom. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. How you guys doing?
Good.
Pretty good.
Tired.
Yeah.
Finals are over.
Dude, that's the best thing. When you're done with finals. Like that's
Uh,
like a hurdle. But is it like your final or like
Yeah, one more semester, bro.
almost there, man? That's kind of great.
one more semester and then what are you gonna do?
Then I'm going to grad school.
Well, I mean, it's still a good feeling because like you're getting
Yeah.
over something. It's like that one section that's finished, and then you're getting
Yeah.
closer.
Hopefully, God willing, grad school in Israel. That'll be the dream.
Oh, that'll be so good.
That'd be cool, man.
Then we'll visit you over there.
Hey, man, like, what better excuse?
Yeah. And you already know. You already know the place, so you gotta like take us around.
Oh, we
Bro,
gotta
we
go
go to my
visit
favorite
Russell.
restaurant.
Like, dude, what's the best place to eat? Where's the place to hang?
Depends on what city you're in.
Yeah. But so for today, we're just gonna talk about this week's Torah portion, and also next week's Torah portion. Because last week's, this week's, and next week's it covers the story of Joseph. Um, so like last week we're getting into the interlude. Is that the right word? Um, well, the beginning of the story of how Joseph
Yeah.
got in this position. Now he's in Egypt. After his brothers they sold him into slavery, and he ends up in Egypt. He ends up second in the house of Potiphar. Potiphar, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
He ends up second in the house of Potiphar, so he's like the second guy out of all the servants there, all the slaves. And then he has the thing with his wife that she tries to get him to be with him. He denies her.
Yeah.
Then he ends up in prison. Then he ends up
Really.
second in command in prison, which I think is the funniest thing. Because like, have you seen that today? Like somebody goes to like prison, okay, and there's like no way out. There's like once you go to prison in Egypt, there's not like, oh, you're gonna be here for like 5 years and then you'll be out. It's like, no, you're there. So, and then
Yeah.
that
But
guy
it's gotta be
become.
frustrating with people that like want to see him like fail. It's like, man, this guy doesn't stop.
It's like I wanted to ruin him, but now he's second in command of the prison. And then
So
by happenstance, he ends up meeting these two people in prison, former servants of Pharaoh, and they tell him his dream. He interprets the dream, and lo and behold, they become right. And the person, the cupbearer, he hears Pharaoh mentioning his dream that he has nobody can interpret it. He mentions Joseph. Joseph interprets the dream, and he talks about 7 years of famine, 7 years of plenty, and how he needs to prepare. And because of that, and because he was able to interpret the dream, thanks to God, he's made second in command of all of Egypt. And it's not like vice president, because vice president here is like very, like he does
Your
some stuff.
presence in waiting.
Yeah, it's more like he's like a mascot. He's kind of like the mascot of America. I'm not gonna lie. Like they don't do that much. Like they do some ceremonies here and there, but they're just there as a backup. You know what I mean? But here, like, Joseph has a lot of power and a lot of decision making as second in command in all of Egypt. So you see that he implements his plan to reap all the crops from the 7 years, save them up so that way through the 7 year famine they can have food to store and give out to the people in Egypt. And because of the famine that was so large, a lot of people from different countries were coming to Egypt to buy food because there was nowhere else where they have food. And it so happened to be that Joseph's brothers they come to buy grain from them, um, and he recognizes them. And that's gonna be a really tough feeling too, because he thought he got over it. You know what I mean? Like when you have something that you've been through, and you don't really get closure, but it's just been so much time that you think you get over it, and then you're thrown in that position, and all those feelings come up, and you see that when you read the Bible, you can feel that pain that he has, and the hatred, because all that hell that he went through because of his brothers that sold him out. Um,
Yeah, it doesn't come out until like he sees like
yeah, everything was
well
going fine. He was like he was probably having like, the best day of his life. He's like, man, Thanks,
When
God.
you see when you see it in the naming of like when he names Manashe, it's like that's like one of the first times that you see like a little bit of like his feelings. He's like, Elohim made me forget about my house father, my the house of my father. I was
That's
like,
tough. That's a tough name. I was gonna be like, Dad, you really gonna name me? Like, that's the name you give me? But okay, that's a tough name. That's what I love about like Hebrew names. Like they would have like very deep meaning, but some of them were like kind of sad. Because I think like Benjamin. Benjamin means I forget what it means. Something
Well, I think
depressing.
his original name was depressing, and then his father's like, no, let it be the son
Yeah,
of the right hand.
yeah, that's what
Like,
it was. Like his mother named him something because she was like dying, like as she was giving birth to Benjamin. And she's like, let's name him this really depressing name. He's like,
I
eh,
think it was Ben Oni, like son of my affliction.
son of my
uh-huh,
affliction, which is like that's sad. Like
the son of my affliction.
I think that
Jeez.
was it.
imagine naming
Like,
your
dang,
kid.
mom,
Imagine
I'm
naming a
sorry.
baby that in the hospital. So what you gonna name him? It's this name. It means son of my affliction. It's like, dang, that's tough. Um, but yeah, so he sees his brothers, and all this hatred is like spewing up, and he can't stand them. Like he's like they must be up here. They're up to here, up to no good, and that's why they're here. Um, and as you read on, he starts asking them questions. He invites them to his place, and he's like, "So, what's up with you guys?" Pretending that he doesn't know them. Um, and then they start talking about how there's a younger brother, Benjamin, which I don't know. Did Joseph know about him before he left? I don't think so, right? Was he born? I don't remember.
Yeah, he was.
He was born?
Yeah.
So yeah, so they mentioned Benjamin, and then they mentioned, he's never met him. So, he wants to meet him, and this whole thing happens where he sets up one of the brothers to look like he was stealing something, and in exchange, he wants to bring them Benjamin. And, long story short, they bring him, and he says, if you give me Benjamin in exchange for your brother, I'll let him go. And all of them, they say they can't because they can't do it again. They can't sell out one of their brothers, and because it's gonna kill their father. That's what they say. And I think a very emotional part because you read it in the Bible, but you can really feel the emotion because it says that he cries out, and all of the house of Pharaoh can hear him. So that's like bitter weeping tears. Um, and the part that catches my attention because the brothers they kind of freak out. They're like, "Oh my God, it's Joseph! He's gonna kill us!" Like that's the reaction they expect because they did something very terrible. First, they thought about killing him, and then I think it was Judah that came up with the idea to sell him. If I'm not mistaken, sorry, am I right or wrong? I think I'm mixing it up.
Uh,
No,
which plot? Well, like which plan was it?
because originally they were going to try to kill Joseph, and then someone came up with the idea, let's sell him. And
Yeah, I
it
think it was
was Judah,
Judah.
right?
Yeah, I think it was Judah's idea to sell him. Yep, because Reuben wanted to come back and save him later.
Yeah, because that's like the worst of two. Well, it's like a little bit better than killing somebody, but still, like it's sad that the decision that his brothers had was either killing him or selling him. Like he was not in a good position, so you can imagine that once they find out he's Joseph, that they're terrified because they don't know what he's gonna do. But he tells them like, look, he understands at that point that all of the reason why this happened was so that he could be put in a position to save him, to save his family during this famine, to preserve them, and to preserve Egypt, and to preserve the people around Egypt. Because of the things that happened, a lot of people were saved. Even though Joseph went through a really tough position, it was through that the what do you call it, the conflict, that he was able to persevere thanks to God. And because I think we talked about this, Alex, last time in the youth class. You were mentioning, that even though Joseph went through all this bad stuff, you could tell that God was by his side. Because again, he would go in a lower position. Like he was going to the pits of like hell at one point, and he was still second command in that place. Um, so I think that's a good thing to take away from Joseph is that even though you might go through tough decision, not tough decisions, tough points in your life, you never know what's the final outcome of everything, or what what could be the reason for those things. Because sometimes from those things you learn things, or they open new opportunities. But you can't just take bad things and just let it consume you. Because if Joseph did that, if he let those bad things overcome him and just like wallow in himself and deny God and ask him like why did you do this to me? But he didn't do that. Like in his toughest points, he was still faithful. You know.
Yeah, he was. I like that he was consistent, but it's interesting because like he receives the dream right at the beginning of the stars, right, and everything, and like basically his brothers bowing down to him, and then now after going through everything he went through, uh, he is seeing the true meaning of the dream, and it is not only them prostrating themselves to him. It's like, what are you gonna do now after everything they you had to go through because of them? Like, are you gonna use your power to put take revenge, or are you gonna do justice, and righteousness? And even though they did that to you, are you gonna remember that they're your brothers? Right? I feel like it's a tough position to be put on, but after Elohim keeping him and guiding him, I feel like the right thing for him was to eventually, even though he did go into this frustration after seeing them, right? Because I feel like his comfort space was that he didn't have to see them anymore, so he was able to just keep going with life. You know what I mean? Like he kept going and kept going, but once he had to encounter the past after everything, is that I think it was the real test for him to see if he had already overcome it or had matured, right, to go to that next level in his leadership role. And he has him representing Elohim.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because he did have the opportunity to be like, you know what, I'm Joseph, by the way, and I'm gonna just put you guys in prison or kill you, whatever, or I'll make you slaves. He could have done that,
Forever. Yeah.
but he forgave them. That's not like, again, it wasn't something simple that they did. They did something terrible.
Yeah.
Like like imagine like your own relatives selling you out
Yeah.
or
And,
thinking of
and the
killing
thing
you,
is,
and things like that.
they think of killing you, then they go, you know what? Let's not. Let's put him in a hole and let's wait. Right. And so they go and sit down and eat as he's in a hole. It's like, oh yeah, it's just our brother is in the hole. We might sell him, we might kill him. We don't know what we're gonna do with him, but let's just sit down and eat for a little bit. It's crazy. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to go through for him to be able to, just keep a head up and keep honoring Elohim, doing his best. It's he shows us a true testimony, but at the same time like I said, he gets tested. After everything, it's like, how are you gonna react? Are you gonna be like them, or are you gonna be better? It's good to see the humanity in him, because
But
until this point, we don't see how he feels really.
yeah, it doesn't really show the emotion. It just says this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then it's towards the end that you start seeing like the emotion, like the big impact.
Hmm.
But I think that's something you can take away. That's a good point. Were you gonna say something, Russ?
Oh no.
Oh, okay. Well, I was gonna say that this is something that I think we should take away now specifically. We're at the end of 2020, and it's been a long, tough year. We've had to deal with COVID and the quarantine and stuff like that. And I think a lot of people realize that they had a lot of time to look into themselves. That's something I've seen a lot
Yeah,
of people do, like introspection, seeing what they need to fix and things like that. And like how important it is to connect with your family and friends and not to take things for granted. Like there were so many things that I took for granted, like simply going outside, hanging out. And now it's so complicated because either in some places you can, or you have to wear a mask all the time. Like I've never appreciated breathing without a mask ever in my life. It's like when you take it off, it's like freeing.
It's like it's such a struggle having to work with the mask. Like it's annoying. I can't breathe sometimes. Like,
Dude,
and then once I start doing like heavy like lifting here and there or whatever,
it's just you can't
I
do it.
get so agitated. It's like
Like
you just have that mask in your face the whole time.
air is amazing. Like I'm not gonna lie. Once you take it
And
off, you go.
customers like at work, we got in trouble. Somebody I don't know, I guess somebody put their mask down a little bit, and somebody like came into the store like complain and they're gonna call corporate. And it's like, man, like you can lose your job for breathing. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's like people like in a short amount of time went from 0 to 100. Like I've seen people get so caught up in this that they've gone in a negative direction. And I think like what you were saying that Joseph he got at this point in his life where he had two choices: to either get revenge on his brothers or be the better person. And I think you can kind of take that into perspective in our in our point of view. We've been through so much this past year, and we either have the choice to just wallow in sorrow and things like that, or just keep our heads up and keep hoping for the best. Because I know
Oh,
it's
and
like
also
you go ahead.
you can also take like which I see what I loved about this story is like again the only reason why um, uh, the famine is how do you say that like there is a provision for the famine, right? There is a an access to Elohim's protection, right, and provision to not only Egypt but to the world is because Joseph stayed true to God, to Elohim. You know what I mean? Like he stayed true, and so by him doing that, he became like this vehicle that was gonna bring Elohim's provision, salvation, right? And so, when he gets dressed with like the ring, right? Pharaoh gives him the ring, Potiphar gives him the ring too, and they dress him with royalty. Many people might be like, oh, you see, if you believe in Elohim, you'll get all these blessings. But I feel like the most important part is that he stayed true to Elohim. Right? He says it when Potiphar's wife tries to sleep with him. He's like, I'm not gonna dishonor Elohim. And then when Pharaoh brings him to interpret the dream, he's like, I'm not gonna give you my interpretation of the dream. Elohim is gonna give you the interpretation of the dream. Right. And so by him being able to be the vehicle that transmits Elohim's purpose is what brought through this one man like this salvation in a way to the world in that moment. And so, if us in this time can become the same thing, but in a body, right, that we call ourselves the body of Messiah and all that, right? If we can do like our best to like keep those differences aside, we can do the same thing and we can do it in a bigger scale, right? But
I mean, the Bible tells us
it
to be the light of the world, the salt of the earth,
yeah.
things like that.
So the story of the Bible don't tell us that this person did it because he was the one that had to do it. I feel like the Bible tells us this person did it, and the personality and the qualities that he embraced was the reason why it was able to happen through him. So you see that example, that means that you're able to do it. It's just, are you going to be able to accept that challenge and stick to Elohim, honor Elohim in the world? You know what I mean? Just
Yeah,
like he
that's
did.
a very good point. Because like it's like you said, Joseph could have chose to do another direction, but because he chose to
Yeah,
stick
yeah, the
with
chance.
God, that's why he became so great. Because he chose to follow God's ways. Otherwise, he
Yeah,
wouldn't. All that good stuff that happened would have happened
yeah, he was the second in command. He was like the second in command too.
3 times.
The general too. He was the second in command to the general of the pharaoh, and then he was the second in command in the prison in
Prison,
Egypt,
yeah.
and then he was the second in command to he
Pharaoh.
basically pharaoh in a way. He just couldn't tell pharaoh what to do,
Yeah,
but he
yeah.
was pharaoh, right? And at that time, pharaoh was like, God, and he was like the most powerful man in the world at that time.
Yeah,
So if you put that into perspective, then the only thing that Joseph did with that power was fulfill God's purpose. Like you don't hear that Joseph said, "Oh," and then he decided to go and take over the world and
take
started
advantage and stuff like that.
destroying people. No, he's like, okay, let's do what we have to do to survive the famine, have what we have for the people, and that's it.
Yeah, but that's why I think people today, because I've seen a lot of people that that it's kind of it's hard because there's some people that they're stuck home alone or they can't do the things that they used to do, and it is depressing because people as human beings we're social beings, so it's natural for us to go out and engage and be with people and stuff like that. And then when you take it away from people, it takes a lot from those people. But I think people shouldn't uh, take the negatives too hard, but be open to the possibility that things might turn around. Nothing stays negative forever. It's only for a certain amount of time before things change. That's what change is. Whether it's good or bad. Things go up and then they go down and things like that. But nothing lasts. Nothing lasts forever. So yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know when this is gonna be all over, but I know it will come. And
stick through it.
It's like this advice that somebody gave me one time. And it was about that. That life is like a painting. And if you ever seen somebody paint, they start off like I don't know if you guys ever seen a Bob Ross video, but they
Yeah.
start off painting the background first. So they paint the sky. They paint the whole canvas of the sky, then they paint the outlines of the mountains, and they start painting the trees. And you don't really understand it in the beginning. It doesn't really make any sense. Like why is all these things happening the way it is? And it's not
Hmm.
until the very end of the painting that you see that everything come together. And life is very much the same way that you don't really understand why things happen until the end, like Joseph. He didn't get it until the end, and that's he like that dream that he had, the dream about the bales bowing down and the sun and the moon and the stars. It was like a random dream, but he didn't get it until the end of everything. And sometimes you just have to wait until that revelation comes in your life, and you'll see what God has planned for you. You just gotta be patient.
Patience is the key.
Yeah.
And commitment.
But definitely, I can't wait for things to turn around and be able to go watch movies and stuff like that. It's been a tough year.
Yeah, I miss the movies.
Yeah, man. I don't think there's gonna be any movies out next year. Like I don't think so. Everything's gonna be on demand, so it's gonna be
Yeah,
crazy.
It's gonna be the year of
on demand.
streaming.
What was it? What did you
It's
say?
gonna be the year of streaming.
Yeah, it's just streaming. But definitely, like we're gonna be those old guys in history. They're gonna ask us all the questions. What you guys do during the quarantine? And we're like, yeah,
We were watching Netflix,
we're watching Netflix. We're watching The Office. I watched The Office 5 times.
Disney Plus, The Mandalorian.
Yeah, man, it's gonna be crazy. We're gonna be part of history. But like I said, like we gotta keep our chins up, and things will turn around.
Yeah, we gotta stay consistent.
Yeah, I think
No,
that's
it's not. It wasn't easy for Joseph. So
that, but that's I think that's the main message of today's video. Is to be like Joseph and just keep persevering.
you
But
have anything for to add, Russell?
yeah,
I think it's a good message. Good message. Be like Joseph and persevere.
persevere.
Yeah.
That is a good
It could be a
message.
shirt. Be like Joseph.
We can use it.
Yeah.
And we can say we can. No, I'm not gonna say
I
I
think there's
could,
a I think there's somewhat of a critique in the Bible. I'm taxing this from Ben Shapiro, but it was a really good point that he made that even though Joseph he trusted in God through everything that he did, and he did persevere a lot. Like he did a lot of good. And some of his methods, it makes you wonder, could he have turned to God a little more for guidance on some things too? Because it ends up in the way that he went about delivering the people of Egypt through the famine and his own people as well. Um, he stored up all the grain, and then people ran out of money, and so they sold their land and they sold themselves into slavery and gave everything over to the government of Egypt, over to the king. And that ends up Joseph's plan that got the people through the famine ended up backfiring in the end, and it ended up putting his own people in the position of slavery. Everyone sold everything, and they ended up being slaves of Egypt. And then it was only a matter of time before Pharaoh would arise that didn't know Joseph.
Who would like counteract.
Yeah, and so while there was a lot of good to what Joseph did, it kind of backfired in a way in the long run. That it makes you wonder, could there have potentially been another way to have gotten through it, of rationing things? It makes you wonder, could he have turned to God for more guidance? And was consolidating all power to the government necessarily the right way to go? And that, I mean, like Joseph, God did put him in the position of authority, but was it necessarily Joseph's place to take the type of power that he did in the end of the day, since it would eventually be handed off to someone else after that?
Because I mean, he did make some choice decisions at the end. Like the Israelites are moved to, is it Gershon?
Yeah,
Mistaken?
Goshen.
Goshen. But that was never really God's plan to like have them stay there. Like it was just a temporary thing. And the problem is that they got used to staying there,
Mm, that's a good
and
point.
then the whole thing with the Exodus had to kick off. It's just like, look, you guys got to go to your land. So
Yeah,
this,
I feel like that's why I was like this whole time like because it's hard. Like I feel like it's hard to bottle up all those emotions, and I feel like there was some uh I think which gives Joseph, even in his good, you know, his story where the Torah says that Elohim was with him and he was prospering him. Um, he did have at the end this little splinter there that he was holding on to. And I feel that splinter that he wasn't able to let go till the end was the splinter that kicked off, all those decisions that he could have made better.
Hmm.
Because I feel like because when he names it, like I said, when he names his son, in his mind, he forgot about his household. So he really wasn't thinking about his people, I think, in that moment, right? So I feel like after he is able to let go, it's like it's too late. You already made so many reforms, and then he moves them into Egypt instead of like moving them out, which he could have done that. He could have just provided for his family
yeah,
and then
'cause I
send them
mean,
home.
if you think about it, they didn't really have to be a price on the grain. Could have just been like,
Yeah, it could have been. So in a sense, he did become Egyptianized. So he assimilated with them because he didn't want to. I feel like he didn't want to have nothing to do in that moment with his family anymore. I feel like he was like, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be or whatever. And that's where I feel like the test came. It's like, nobody, you're not supposed to stay here. I put in power here because you had a purpose.
but he
Not,
even knew like they were not gonna stay there. He was like, carry my bones out of this land when you guys leave.
uh,
Don't leave me. Don't leave my body here. Which I think is so
don't
funny
leave me
though.
here in Egypt.
Yeah,
Don't bury me with the dogs, or
yeah.
my dogs or anything like that. My possessions.
But yeah, that's a good point, Russell. Because some people
That
they
is
get
true.
sidetracked and they do things that they think maybe at the time is right,
Yep,
and then in
that's true.
foresight, it's like it actually made a big damage. And you don't see that in the long run, but it kind of it's like a snowball effect, where you
Hmm.
drop the snowball on the hill and then it starts rolling and growing, and then you have this giant thing at the end, and that happens a lot. So that's a good
I
point.
think I think there's like another lesson applicable to the Corona time and all this too is don't give the government too much power. I mean, because it can eventually be wielded against you.
I
I
mean,
mean,
that's a true statement there too, because a lot of people in the midst of freaking out, they were willing to give up anything,
yeah,
and that
and
shows you
immediately
like,
they did. They gave up everything.
I mean, yeah, and then, like I said, like Alex was saying, that lady or that person that was freaking out about the mask, like a couple months before, it wouldn't have mattered, but now because people are so scared, People will freak out. I mean, I remember that one time there was another lady. She was yelling at people because they didn't have their mask on. And I could understand why you're worried about your health and safety and stuff like that. But it's just so crazy to see people drastically change like that from just a couple months ago or a year ago. Now, everything was fine, and now you're being kind of belligerent and yelling and stuff like that. Because those people were not even close by. Those people were like, I remember they're like 12 feet away, maybe more. And she was yelling. So it's like you said, Russell. Like you can't let your emotions overcome you, and then just give up a bunch of like, you know, give up a lot of your power and stuff like that, or assimilate, or what's the word I'm looking for? Because you think about it, that's what happened to the Israelites. They moved in and then they assimilated,
Assimilate, yeah.
and then they became docile.
Yeah, I feel like that's where the being like firm and consistent is. Like I feel like uh, that's where Joseph was doing good until an extent. Like he was himself, and then after he gained power over like all of Egypt and all that, I feel like that was such a responsibility that I feel that's when he like assimilated. Like he became Egyptian in a way, right? Because he was in command and blah blah. So I feel like our goal should be to like stay true to what we believe. Like that's like that should be like the foundation to, especially now in our movement, Hebrew roots movement or whatever we want to call it. Um, is the only difference that we'll ever make, especially now, is like consistency in what we say we believe. Because every other movement has been created in all the other denominations has fluctuated everything every single time. The only difference maker will always be the consistent people that will till the end. Like that's what the Jewish people have so much respect in their faith. Is like we're Jews and we have our history and we believe in this and this is how it goes and forever we will believe this. You know what I mean?
Because I mean, they do
Till
have
what?
different
Till
sects, but they all in one day, like especially during the feast days, they all come as like one. They're not
one,
like,
yeah.
oh, it's those guys. I don't like what they believe in. I don't want to hang out with those people. They're like, no, it's that time of the
It's like,
year.
oh, yeah, you wear So their differences is like, oh, you wear all black. I don't wear all black. It's like okay, right? But Shabbat is Shabbat, right? The feasts are the feasts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Elohim is Elohim Adonai. So
And now that's kind
they
of like a
believe
mindset.
Messiah is coming.
That's a mindset that you need right now because you don't want to push people away. You want to get closer with people. I think now is a great
Yes,
opportunity to do that. To show the brotherly love to one another, and be that arm that reaches out. Don't be the opposite. Be like, I don't want to get with anybody. I'm in my corner. Doing my own
yeah.
thing.
Especially in a time of struggle, people are going to be looking
Yeah, people are gonna look for hope.
for Elohim.
For Elohim, for stuff like that, and you got to be like, hey, I have the answers, and it's in this book.
It's like I'm not going to give you my opinion. I'm going to give you Elohim's wisdom, and then
Yeah,
that's where you go. Just like Joseph did, in a sense. So
yeah. But
it's the beauty of the Torah. So many ins and outs.
Joseph is really it's not. I don't want to say like it's a simple story, but it's a typical story of you have the person, they go to their lows, and then they end up on the high. Uh, I think that's why people love the story of Joseph because it's like an underdog story.
Mm.
Um, but I think you know there yet a lot. I have a lot to learn from that. That yeah, Joseph persevered, but like you, Alex said, and you, Russell said, he had some things that he was holding on to, and there's some mistakes that he made along the way. And we got to make sure that we don't do that. I mean, we're not perfect. We will make our mistakes sometimes. But if you see that you are doing those things, yeah, and you have the option to not do it, to do better, then you always choose to do better. But yeah, I think that wraps off the podcast though. It's pretty pretty short, pretty simple.
Pretty good.
Um, but we'll see everybody next week.
See you guys next week.